So the 2020 Uprising portrait series can be found I think it's portraits of the Minneapolis Uprising.com. It's like a WordPress that I put together. So you can find it there. But basically, I mean, he was murdered less than a mile from my house where I lived in Powderhorn Park, and I just felt overwhelmed. And so often in those instances, I had done some portraiture work of activists, after Jamar Clark died and Philando Castile, and save the Boundary Waters. It became, after the RNC in '08, I started taking my camera to protests, and I kind of refined this style of, I don't know what you'd call it, active consent, of just like, do you mind if I take your picture? I'll start a conversation with you, get to know you a little bit, have you look at the camera. So I took that into what ended up becoming like a year-long project. I as a live sound engineer, like I said, that's my work. My whole industry was gone, so I was pretty much unemployed, and so I just kind of embedded myself at George Floyd Square for about a year, and just got to know the people there. Whenever I would overhear like an interesting conversation or something, I would just look for stories. The idea is, in my head at least, is I wanted to communicate that movements like this require the participation of all sorts of people doing all sorts of things, and it's not one thing or another. And I got really frustrated also with the coverage that I saw from local and national outlets alike. They would come to George Floyd Square, they'd sit in front of the mural, they'd say, a car burned today, and it was just always the same thing. And I think they missed, the media has a way of missing the human aspect of big stories like this, and they kind of look for the broader wide angle view, no pun intended again. So I just wanted to create, it was almost like a collaborative effort with the people that were there, almost like a yearbook of sorts, just to interview people, take their statements, why they were there, take their portrait. And it is usually, I can't take too much credit for it, because I had the equipment and maybe a general eye for composition, but it was like, where do you want your picture taken? Is there anything in the space that speaks to you? And it was usually in some situation that they were already in themselves. I would take their information, I'd send the image to them along with the write-up that I made from their interview, and I'd say, does that look good to you? You can make any changes you want. You can also remove yourself from the project at any time you want. And I still have relationships with a lot of these people today. So it was just more of a, I didn't want to be the guy just taking pictures of shit on fire. And I come from a more rural area where I know a lot of people who were not seeing the human side. They didn't know these people. And it's a lot easier to dehumanize people without looking them in the eyes and knowing their story. So every picture is just a person looking at the camera and telling you about themselves. And I thought that was an effective way to reach people who needed reaching, people who look like me, frankly, from places like where I'm from. So that was the motivation. I wanted to do it in a very transparent, sort of collaborative way with the community, and not make people feel like I'm just another person with a camera there to extract from the space, but rather someone who's there to listen mostly. And I knew, again, people who look like me, it was a time for us to listen, and that's what I wanted to do, and the way that I knew how to do that was with a camera.